welcome back to another episode of Come Over for Dinner. I am so glad you're joining me today. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is June Kern. She is a mother to 4 children and has been an art teacher for years to children. She is currently teaching 5th grade at Logos School. She previously was a homeschool mom to her own children and taught art classes for them and their friends, and has also hosted summer camps where she teaches art. And she also at the homeschool, or not the homeschool, but the Ladies Homemaking Fair, had a table where it was just all kinds of really cool ideas for teaching art to children. So she's just a treasure trove of ideas. Welcome, June.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, so you and I share some Southern roots, and I have grandparents, South Carolina, Kentucky, West Virginia. You know, there's just a lot of Southern in me, but growing up in a city, I don't think I sound, you know. So I've got 4 kids, and they're all very close in age, so we're just through upper elementary and junior high. You know, they'll all graduate within 5 years. So we're in I think, personally, the funnest season of mothering. How could it get better than right now? Like, everyone is home a lot, and lots of family dinners. Like, you know, we aren't in senior high sports yet where you see them at like 5:45 in the morning, they get back at 9:30. So we're not there. Like, it's just, so that's my life right now. And I'm teaching one of my own children. So
very exciting.
I'm with her all day. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I did the same thing for my daughter and son. It was a smaller Christian school, and I taught a combined 5th and 6th grade, and my daughter was in 5th and my son was in 6th.
Okay.
And it was
that's crazy
much fun.
I know. I knew it would be fun because when I homeschooled, it was ridiculous. You know, you're just having a bunch of fun. But I thought, oh, will I be able to be fair, like on both sides, you know? And we kind of, it's really fun. And her little sweet smile, I just enjoy it a lot.
It also, you have another positive aspect of it is you have all their little friends in there too.
Oh, my word.
So you really get to know who their friends are and just be able to spend time with them all day long.
It's funny because I prayed, you know, for the kids in that class. And, you know, you love your kids, not because they're the most perfect, but because they're yours. You know, I always say, I love you because you're mine. And God picked my students. Do you feel that way too? You know, where it's like, you're mine. Like, I like you more. I like the other kids at this school, but
my class
you're the best.
Y'all are the best 2nd graders.
Yes.
Out of all the 2nd graders.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. So how did
fun.
you learn art? Did you teach yourself or did you study art in school?
Well, I grew up in a very creative family. So my mother is a exceptional seamstress. Like, she sewed my wedding dress without a pattern, and it was beaded and gorgeous and amazing. My dad worked full time. You know, he had a shop on Music Row in Nashville, Tennessee, where all the recording studios were, but he was a carpenter and he did carving. He helped restore, you know, historic buildings in Nashville, but he made Windsor chairs and he did a lot of lathe work. Everything in our life was kind of creative. And all the time my parents said, I would say, can I have that? And, you know, will you buy that for me? And they would say, no, we can make it. And so that, I wasn't like a great artist. I liked to draw and have sketchbooks, but in college, I finally was like, I went to a public school that didn't have great art classes, I guess. But in college, I was an art major. And I was not the art major that knew exactly like I wanted to be a painter, or I just liked everything. So being an art teacher ended up being a good fit for me.
When you make recommendations for art for children, for say moms or people who are not an artist, but they want to do art with children, what would you recommend? I do remember your table at the Ladies Homemaking Fair, and there were a lot of ideas, but I don't remember what they all were.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many bests. So for a mother who's a little bit intimidated, right? I think, first of all, start with the end in mind, right? So God is a creator God. He made us. He paints a different sunset and sunrise every single day. So we're mimicking him. And so if we just decide we're not going to ever let the kids paint because it's a mess, we're not coming close to mimicking our Father. Every night he paints a different sunset, right? And he's changing the seasons. He does the colors of the leaves differently. So to train a child up in the arts is to be faithful to, in one of the many aspects of acting like our Father. And so just a way is that when they're little, like get the washable watercolor paints. Little people love mark making. Crayons, nobody likes crayons. Don't get crayons. The only fun thing we ever did with crayons is we would turn them. This relates to cooking. Okay, so this is my tip. But get out your pancake griddle and turn it on the lowest setting. Like not even, just like leave your hands on it, make sure it's not getting hot. Cover it with a big piece of newspaper. We all have like 1,000 crayons that we keep. We feel bad. We buy them because we all love the box, but we don't really like to color with them. So get that out, put a big sheet of white paper on the newspaper. And then, you're standing right there with your little 4-year-old or whatever. And so it's not too hot. And then you take those crayons and they melt onto the paper. And it seriously looks like oil paint. Literally every day we were doing something fun. And it's just, I had took an old unattractive armoire that someone gave us for free. And we just filled it up with our art supplies. So we had this room kind of at the end of the house, right off the kitchen. And I found on Craigslist it looks so cute. It was like from Pottery Barn or something, but it was like the low, big table. And we had like 4 little chairs around it. And you could pull the white paper over it. So we would do like big banners, or I would draw like a long street and they would make all their little cars and people and villages. And then there are seasons like that I didn't let them do it, but we would always have an easel up, and
just them using their imagination instead of being bored or just sitting in front of a television.
Oh no, we never
something like that.
Yeah, that was my parents. We never had a television, and so we just really learned to like play outside. We have a big sandbox, and I wanted that for my kids, and then I wanted more. Of course, you build on all that your parents give you. So. And this community, so when I was raising little children, I was listening to all the podcasts here and reading all of Miss Wilson's books. And, one of the things that Pastor Wilson always said was like, yes, say yes to your children. And so whether it was cooking or art, it was like, in your spirit, I would feel myself clench and be like, Mom, can we get out the paints? And I would want to say no so bad. And I would say, yes. So... yeah, it's just trying 95% of the time, whether it's art or cooking, to be like, yes, yeah, we'll do it.
Well, a lot of times you build up in your mind that it's going to be this big mess, this big headache, it's going to be so hard to clean up, and it's really not.
Oh my gosh.
No big deal.
And like, it's just joy, It was just like an environment where the kids, and now I'm telling you, like every day, like weekends, it is wild. Unbelievable crafting at my house. I cannot believe what my children are making and doing. Fun. And they drive the whole thing, like it's not me. And I still, though, like last weekend, my son was like, Mom, I need you to help me sew like this tongue for this tennis shoe that I'm redoing. Like he's super into shoes because he's a junior high boy. And he's doing all these custom shoes. And I was sick. Wow. I canceled on you last week. And he was like, can you help me sew for like an hour or so? And I was like, yes,
Yes.
But it just
get out of bed and do that.
Yeah, you just end up with these skilled kids.
And so creative.
Yeah, very.
I mean, who would think of that? That's so imaginative. And they're developing into their skills into better and better and better things. They're not still on the
and we're not
paints.
in control of the it's so cool to me to see all these different directions that they're going. Like, okay, so this relates to hospitality, but I had just gotten sick a couple of weeks ago. It was the beginning of my first year of full-time teaching since I moved here to Moscow, and my daughter came and she was like, Mom, I really have a big idea that I want to do for decorating the table for fall. And I think it was like September 1st or something, And I was like, you do? Take me to the dollar store. I know what I want. So she got all of these little pumpkins, and then she took old sweaters and covered the little pumpkins and then gilded the stem of the pumpkin. So they're these beautiful colors. So our table is like creams, but all these blues, like blue pumpkins, Bess.
Okay, I need to see a picture of this.
I think I can pull one up. And then she was like, Mom, all I need you to do is sew a runner for me. And my kids are relentless. Like when they have an idea, and I wish I was this way because I'm really not. I can let an idea die just so I can sit down for a minute, and they won't. But
they hang on to it. They have the energy.
Oh my gosh. So she did like 9 pumpkins and this big acorn, and totally driven by things she had seen online, but then she made it her own. And I mean, we spent nothing on it. It was all these fabrics we had, but the table is gorgeous.
Well, and to see the fruit of your labor of all those years of saying yes when they were little, they have learned and grown to where now your daughter in, you said middle school? Is able to create a beautiful tablescape for you. That's incredible.
That was totally out of her idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it's like all those yeses. And I see this in cooking too. She's super into cooking. The Cooks Illustrated that comes to our house is in her name, the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
and she's the one driving, like trying new recipes. And it's funny how quickly like you're being pulled behind these kids that they're surpassing you in their desire to create and make and do different things. So it's a really exciting time, actually.
It really is, because then you turn around and all of a sudden dinner's made, or, she's made some new cookies or scones, or it's just such a lovely fruit of all those years of you pouring into teaching her and letting her learn and being okay if there was
mess, lots of mess. And there's still
something
mess.
got dropped on the floor or whatever.
We are blessed with a giant basement that all this crafting happens in. And every Saturday, we have to go down and kind of reset. It gets out of hand,
Well, and now they're old enough too that they can help pitch in and clean it up. You know, that's another big benefit.
Oh yeah, no, they're amazing.
When you're letting them do things, create and cook and all of that, they also jump in with the cleaning, and that becomes something that they can really do independently as well.
They do. Yeah. I learned that from this community too. Like Rachel and Becca talking about the second you clean up the living room and make it really nice and you get all the throws, you are supposed to rejoice, when they come in, and because you invite them into that. So
when they come in and actually find it
totally
warm
so I'm
and inviting, and they start piling in with their puzzles and books.
So for me, it's organizing the craft closet and knowing that it will be destroyed because it's calling to them.
Used. All the different children are going to come in and start pulling things out and being inspired and creating. And
so at our school, it's really interesting because when I homeschooled, I was too tired to really push into some of the more creative projects relating to school. And I had heard, because I had friends in this community, and they would tell me, oh, it's May and we're doing these. My friend Gentry, she would talk about these giant craft projects her kids were doing, and I was not excited.
Oh, through the school.
Because
it was an assigned project.
It was an assigned project, and everyone in elementary has these larger projects in May. I was not looking forward to it. And now it is like my favorite thing ever because it pushes me past my lazy stage, and my kids enter a realm that I did not even know existed, like
they're being really excited
and
figuring out what to create for themselves.
Again, I'm drug behind. I'm down there, my son, the first year he was at Logos, wanted to make a 3D Greek trireme, which is a ship that has 10 billion oars, like all the levels of the oars. And he had to make everything he wanted to.
Wow.
But it just turned out so great. So anyway, but we're totally on a crafting where we're like, I could stay in this ditch forever.
Do you have any homemade recipes for kids, like for Play-Doh or anything like that you did when you were growing up?
My mom set an amazing example here. Because yes, we made homemade Play-Doh, and I mean, I can like see it in my mind right now of her mixing that and then it being warm and adding the color to it. And so I definitely did that for my kids. And I have, her like handwritten recipe that's been in my cookbook for 20 something years, that I used with my kids. But we did something that I think universally is called making mixtures. Like we would say, Mom, can we make a mixture, me and my sister? And she'd be like, sure. We get out the flour and the sugar and the butter and just mix it up however we wanted. And And sometimes she would bake it and sometimes we'd just throw it away. But she just let us play with ingredients. And so I've always done that with my kids. And we had a neighbor when we were in Tennessee that was incredible at this. Like, she ended up having a club for her son and my kids where they did this at around age 10. Okay. But they would go to her house every Tuesday afternoon and they would make a mixture. And it was a contest with the three of them to see who could make it taste like a cake.
And they would actually bake this mixture.
Three separate. And to this day, like, she will tease at how much butter my daughter Virginia would use, and so I would buy her pounds of butter and just send it to the house. Still, my two younger ones say, Mom, can I make a mixture? And I'm to the point now where they've had many years of fun. And I still say yes, but I'll say, actually go grab the Betty Crocker cookbook. Like that
and turn it into a real recipe.
And pick anything in there. You literally can bake anything in there and I'll help you get started. So, there's kind of like a shift of like, you know what? You're actually to the age where
we're going to turn it into some real food where we all want to eat it.
Yeah. So my mom, she had the Play-Doh recipe and she really let me try recipes out when I was very young. And she cooked everything from scratch because she thought it tasted better and because it was cheaper. My dad was a carpenter and I think they were on a really fixed budget in the late 70s and 80s. And so, making biscuits was a economical thing, way to fill out a meal. But I think it has to have Crisco in it. Like, I tried so long to use like the fancy lard or all butter. And I've come to a piece that I will die one day. And if Crisco takes a little bit out of my life, it's worth it.
It's worth it. So are you talking about biscuits especially?
Okay.
Tell me about your classic. Is this passed down through the generations or what?
Well,
what
I
is
do
this
have strong feelings
recipe?
about biscuits, Bess. I do.
Okay. As most Southerners do.
I have feelings about biscuits and I'm open to change. I really am. Because even this year, I've changed my biscuit recipe. I grew up with really good biscuit makers. My South Carolina grandmother was an amazing cook and just absolutely Southern. It was the stewed down vegetables that I adore. It was the fried chicken and pot roast, and every single meal had biscuits. Huge breakfast, always with grits. Sweet tea at every breakfast, lunch, dinner. There was a huge pitcher. Just classic South Carolina Southern food. And her biscuits were Crisco. And they had a very different texture and shape, I think, for me. So
were they 100% Crisco? No butter?
No butter. None.
Okay.
And I can remember her. She would have the largest container of Crisco because she used it for
all the time.
Well, and she used it for frying fish and hush puppies. And that was a once a week meal at their house. They loved fishing. So, and all the fish was theirs that they had caught and filleted. Okay, so that's South Carolina grandmother, Nanny. And then there's my grandmother who was from Kentucky, but she was a fine, and we're not talking rich, but there was something about her manners where she was a fine lady. She was a home economics, college level home economics teacher, and her biscuits were butter, and they just tasted different, and they rose higher than Nanny's biscuits, and they were beloved as well.
All butter?
All butter. Okay. So I've been making biscuits forever. Watched my mom. Do you ever watch Brenda Gant?
No.
Beth.
What's her show? Okay, is it a TV show?
She comes up on my Facebook feed, I guess, and she has the richest Southern accent. She's Alabama.
Okay.
And she teaches people how to make biscuits, and she is a hoot.
I'm going to have to look her up.
And she calls Crisco grease. Like, she doesn't say, she calls it, and you get some grace. And she's just the funniest. But she's funny. Like, she really inspires younger women to cook. That's her. You should check her out because she's got a really neat message and and she just has her little iPhone in her little Southern kitchen and she's probably 75. I don't know how old she is, but anyway, I do it the way my grandmother in Tennessee, who was from Kentucky, did. And you have to be very careful with your dough, just in the sense that you're not overworking it, right?
Okay. Yes.
And the way
like
you
scones or something
I typed up a recipe thinking about coming to talk to you about this, and I was thinking it's really hard to write what you're supposed to do in that one step where you mix your buttermilk in.
Because if you overdo it, it makes them flat and tough.
But this Brenda Gant, she has a bowl that she takes, like a crockery bowl, and she puts a self-rising white lily flour, which you can't get here anymore, and I've come to terms with that. But then she puts her grease in, okay, and she fills that little hole up with the buttermilk, and then she takes a hand that is just absolutely covered in buttermilk and Crisco, and she mixes that
by hand.
But she leaves like an inch and a half that she doesn't even use of the flour, so that the dough forms in the flour like a nest. And so you get your biscuit dough and it's sitting. And so then she just covers that bowl when she takes her dough out and uses that bowl the next time.
Oh.
She just crazy.
Just over and over and over.
So different. So I'm
going to have to look that up. That is so interesting.
The way I learned to make them was, you do the pea-size butter. And
which I'm looking at your recipe. I actually do. I don't know if your grandmothers did it this way, but using the food processor, it is so easy.
I love it.
Turn your butter into this small, tiny little, you need it cold to turn it into little pea-sized pieces instead of using the hand.
So that's how
blender.
my mom did it. So we had the pastry cutter or just a fork.
Pastry cutter.
But she was making it just for a family of 4 for the most part. We literally
just puts it right on in there and it breaks it. You can do it for biscuits, scones, pie crust. Have you ever heard of grating butter?
I've tried it and I don't love it
as well for you.
No, I would just prefer my Cuisinart.
It's so fast that way.
Yeah.
But if you didn't have one, my sister showed me that one time where you grate cold butter into a recipe, or some people even do frozen butter. But you just grate it in and then mix it in, and it's similar to achieving the really small pea-sized chunks that are spread thin or throughout. But you don't like it as well?
If I'm doing a really large, it's just too much butter to trouble myself with it.
That's true. If you're doing a lot, that could be it too. If you're doing a smaller amount, like if you're doing one batch of scones, for instance.
Yeah.
I did that recently. I tried that. You just grated it really quick, and then because I was just making a single recipe to try this new recipe, new batch of scones. But if I was making a quadruple recipe, I would have pulled out my food processor.
So I do my food processor. And then I just dump all that in a big, big bowl. And then I stir in the bowl and then put it on my counter to pat it out. So
what do you serve biscuits with? You said that one of the grandmothers did it breakfast, lunch, and dinner. What do you serve biscuits with?
Well, we do not eat the way that my Southern family did. And so we only have biscuits every other week. So one of my kids begs for biscuits and gravy.
Sausage gravy.
Oh, yes. And okay. So my grandmother in South Carolina, she grew up, her father was a coal miner, and she was the oldest of many siblings. And so this sausage and gravy and biscuits, you can fill up a man, like it's very filling.
Stick to your ribs.
Sticks to your ribs. And so you can take 1 pound of sausage and get a decent amount of gravy and 3 big pans of biscuits. And
do you serve anything with it if you do sausage and biscuit? Or sausage,
we always
gravy,
have the griddle
biscuits?
Going. And so it's like eggs to order.
Eggs.
And so if I would do my biscuits and get them in the oven, I usually have a child browning. My kids can make the gravy now. Gravy is truly the easiest thing to make ever.
It really is. People are scared of it, but it's pretty easy if you try it a time or two.
No. It's kind of no fail. Like the only thing you could do wrong is put too much milk in initially, because it's hard to turn back. But if you have it too thick, you just add
a little milk.
Yeah. The other trouble is that if you were having a group of people over and you want to do biscuits and gravy, it gets kind of blubbery looking. Like if you take 15 minutes to go welcome all your guests and come back and look at the gravy, you might not think you want to serve it. You just add a little milk.
Because it can get really thick.
Yeah. Here is my tip on biscuits. Like you could look at a recipe, you can follow it. But what my nanny did in South Carolina is she would get her pan that she was putting the biscuits in and pour Wesson oil in the pan. Okay. To where you have a glistening, like if you were to tip the pan, it would almost run, not just buttering it where it's flat. And so in a cookie sheet, what's that cookie sheet size? Is that 13 by 17, 13 by 19?
That kind of,
yeah. maybe 3 tablespoons of Wesson oil. And so when you put the biscuit down in it, the bottom, and you cook biscuits super high, like 500 to 550, like very high heat, which is different than like a cookie or something. But the bottom of the biscuit is oily and really crunchy.
Golden
the
brown,
middle is
crisp.
super tender. And then that top is just, so you want to eat a biscuit like right away. And then with the gravy on it, it's just that crunch of the bottom of the biscuit. Like that's my favorite part.
And you want those different textures because the gravy is a soft texture. You need a little bit of crunch.
Yep. It all works together.
Sounds
so
amazing.
I did. But I have this memory of my grandmother in South Carolina. She would go back to West Virginia for these family reunions, and they were in the holler. I mean, like, if you've heard of a holler, I've been there. And people in the holler put Coca-Cola in their baby bottles for their little, like, it is a different type of place.
Or this is not a
this
healthy
is Appalachia.
podcast.
But she and her sister Peggy would cook for like 100 people all the meals. And they had this, they did not even have a kitchen best. It was called a cook shack because the family reunion was you're in the holler and everybody brought a tent. And so my nanny, my grandmother, who was doing all the cooking, slept in a tent. And I would drive up there and stay with her. And she had a like blow up mattress in her tent. And she would get up in the morning and brush her hair and put a little makeup on at her little mirror. And then she would walk, meet her sister, Ona. That was my grandmother's name, Ona Lee Pitts. And then her sister Peggy, and the two of them cooked for that whole camp. And so when they made sausage biscuit, when they did this gravy, it was in like massive cast iron. All this family would be there eating these
piles and piles.
Yeah, and so they were outputting this type of food, just
it's like it was no big deal.
Yeah, like beans and rice with sausage and, stuff like that. But anyway, I have good memories of sausage.
That's incredible. Well, speaking of food, we're already on food, but what would you create? What kind of menu would you create if you were having people into your home? What's one of your favorites besides biscuits and sausage gravy?
When I was in college, friends were doing internships like in Washington, D.C., and it was the first time I had ever taken a trip to New York City. We discovered all these ethnic restaurants. And so Thai food, Ethiopian food, and I just went crazy for it. In college, my first trip to England, I'd never had Indian food. And the spices were amazing. So the recipe that I would share that I think is so fun to cook is like an African beef stew. It's a very familiar technique like that we're used to when we make a beef stew, where you take like stew beef and you brown it. But instead of doing like just our typical salt and pepper and then adding like our carrots, and which we do that too. We love that. But I've done a African beef stew where it's like coconut milk, and they have like a special set of spices, and I'm not even going to remember how to pronounce it. It starts with a B, but I've made it a lot because it's really good and it's really spicy. But in Nashville, we had this really great ethnic grocery store that was owned by a Middle Eastern man. And it really reminded me of like the teeny grocery store that I shopped at when I was a little girl. I mean, my mom shopped there, but her high school friend's dad owned this store. And so you went in and you had this experience where it's like this teeny little grocery store. He was the butcher. So if you wanted to cut a meat, he left the little teeny cash register and went and got your ground beef. But it was just so great. And so I hate these big grocery stores now. I really don't like it.
You're just not getting personalized service like you could in a store like you
So
just
when
mentioned.
my kids were little, we found this little ethnic grocery store in Nashville, and it was a bit of a drive, but they had Amish chickens for like next to nothing. I would go and buy like 4 chickens, and the man would always give my kids candy. Like he was so happy to see my children. But one of the things they had was an Ethiopian lady would make the bread that goes with Ethiopian food is called energia. And it is like a huge, round, puffy pancake. And so I would buy a bag of like 10 of those stacked up and take them home. It's really hard to replicate that. And like an Ethiopian meal would take one of those giant pieces of bread, the anerja, and then it would have the dishes they were serving in mounds on that bread. And then they have these really cool brass trays and table stands, and then people would sit around this piece of bread with all these beautiful mounds of food on it. And so I just have tried it. And the thing that's super cool about Ethiopian food is it reminds me of my South Carolina Southern food. So they kind of overstew their green beans, but they're spicy and Ethiopian tasting instead of like ham hock green beans that I love, But they had like stewed down, there's like a chicken dish called Dora Wat, 2 words, that I love, that you serve this like red spicy chicken dish with cut up hard-boiled eggs on it. So that would be there. And then like 3 pretty bean dishes, like a bright yellow split pea, a lentil, and then this African stew. And so they would put all these different vegetables in it to like stretch out that beef. But I just love this stew. And so I've served it for like Sabbath meals, but you can make the anerja. It's not really that hard to, they do a fermented bread. So the copycat recipe does not include all the deliciousness, that
it's not quite as good as the authentic.
No, but you in a pan, it's just like making a crepe. It's like Ethiopia's version of a crepe.
So do you put your stew on it like they do, or do you set it on the side? How do you serve it?
See, I just do it more, American.
Like in a bowl,
I don't
and then
have
on the side is your bread.
Yep. So the way they do it is then you get the bread, they roll into these rolls. It's so cool. And then you pull off a piece that's bigger than a silver dollar, and you use that to scoop. Every bite you take, you're scooping it. You're eating with your hands, but you're not touching the food because you have a piece of bread in your hand. Sometimes I'll serve it over rice if you're trying to, serve a lot of people. And then sometimes I'll just serve it in a bowl with that bread. And then sometimes for my family, I've actually done the little pieces of bread and then put the stew on it. So at Ethiopian restaurants, they serve it with, it's like an iceberg lettuce salad. It's not a fancy, but they have tomato slices and then like a vinaigrette on it. And so I've done that as a side when I've served that meal. I enjoy ethnic food, and I think it's a way to kind of shake up your Sabbath.
When people come in, they're not going to have just made that at home.
Really, really good. All the spices and it has tomato in it, and I can't remember. I don't have the recipe right here pulled up, but
well, that sounds really unique and
it's
very
so
fun.
Good. It's easy.
What kind of dessert do you serve with it?
I guess it would depend on the season, and it's a pretty heavy meal. So, it's something lighter. You
wouldn't want to make like a 3-layer chocolate cake or something. Nobody would be able to eat it.
That makes my stomach hurt right now. No,
so
you'd have to go.
Maybe some
fruity.
fruits.
Yeah, maybe fruit. I think so. Yeah.
Well, do you do any shortcuts or time savers with this meal? Can you make it ahead of time, or can you freeze it, or anything like that you think like if you're serving a large amount of people?
Oh man, this meal would, as they say, freeze beautifully. What movie was that from? That's from Steel Magnolias. It freezes beautifully. No, I think this would freeze great. When I started teaching this summer, I'd even just gone and made a big beef stew because my kids love that for lunch. And so, it would freeze really well. This you could definitely make ahead.
So it sounds like you're mixing Southern with Ethiopian.
There's a lot going on.
Any other things? Did your husband bring something to the table?
Oh, yes, he does. He had a grandmother who was from Germany. And so we have inherited the most amazing German food traditions. His grandmother's sister would come and visit from Germany when I was just starting to have children. And so,
how wonderful.
I know.
She was cooking in the kitchen,
yes.
I imagine.
Oh, my goodness. And so one memorable visit, she would fly out to Oregon where his family was, and I was in Tennessee, and I thought, I really just need to get out there. And so I took Virginia. I only had one baby, and we flew out. And so it was me and baby Virginia and Tante Krista, and Oma, so the German grandmother was there, and then my mother-in-law, was hosting us. And so we just cooked German food. And this was like foreign to me. It was so cool. And so one of the things that she made, it's so funny how God gave us all these ingredients all around the world. Mm-hmm. And so one culture does something with them. And even if it's different, but it's reminding you of things in your culture. So she made these German cabbage rolls. And so you mix up like a pork, and I think it's pork and beef. I'm going to look at the recipe. Yeah, it's a mix. And it's got like mustard in it, chopped onion. It's very simple, right? It's not. And you make a mixture of that. You think kind of like a meatloaf idea. Mm-hmm. But then you wrap it in. So you have to parboil the cabbage leaves. It's a bit of a to-do to soften them. But then you roll them up and they almost look like egg rolls. And you put toothpicks in them. And then you kind of pan fry them so that the cabbage gets a brown. But then you're also creating this really nice, you make kind of a roux with the drippings in the pan and you add, I think, is it bacon? Oh, yes, it's bacon fat. And then there's the caraway seeds that always are bringing out like a German flavor. Mm-hmm. And then you make that sauce and you put all those cabbage rolls back in there and you let them cook until that beef is cooked. It's just delicious. And the other little thing that now my daughter can make it really well is the spätzle. And so like when we think about having mashed potatoes as a side, Germans have spätzle. And so you make a dough that, how thick is it? Like thicker than a milkshake, but not as thick as like biscuit dough. You could pour it.
Okay.
And so it has a little bit of egg, flour. It's very, very simple. But then there's like a little tool that sits on top of a pan of boiling water. And so you pour the dough into, it's almost like this, it looks like a cheese grater, but it has a container that holds the dough over the grater. And so you move the grater and little squiggly dough falls into the salted water. Let's see, I think you cook it for like 3 minutes. And the thing that is super cool is that I have the recipe like from his grandmother. And I think it cooks for like 3 minutes and then you strain them out. What's that tool that not a sieve.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we have like an antique one. So it's really fun. And then so you set all those aside in a colander, right? And it takes a while to cook them all. So you end up with this great big mound of spätzle. And so the Germans do different things with it from that point. But one of the things that we like to do is then you fry it in butter and then it has like that gravy from the pan goes over it. And it's super
delicious.
Yummy.
Where do you find those special tools? Like you said, the especially the one...
The spätzle maker that
the grater that has.
I'm sure Amazon. We could look one up right now.
Well, you'll have to send me a link. I don't know what it would be called.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
It's a fun thing. And this time of year, Oktoberfest, we get real hungry for like German sausages and cabbage rolls and spätzle and rouladen. That's a special dish. It's very special. It's expensive and it's like a beef roll that Ian's mom makes and that has mustard. And I think the last time she was here, she and Ian made them. And that's the thing that's so fun about these recipes. When you're teaching your kids to make them, or like when they taught me, it's so social. Like you have a Pilsner and the baby's being passed around. And, it's just like
the
making
family's doing it together and they're learning recipes from their heritage.
Yeah. So we have some really crazy different influences. We've got the German and the Southern and we love the ethnic food. Yeah, my kids really love spicy too. So that's something that when people come over for dinner, I have to remember not to put so much cayenne and red pepper
your
flake.
Kids don't mind.
Oh, no.
That is unusual. But if they've grown up with it, I have heard that. Like, say you go to India, babies are sitting there eating curry that Americans
couldn't handle,
not be able to handle because they're not used to it.
Right. Well, my little fourth grader, they have the individual little Tabascos that you can get at Winco, but they like to keep them in their little lunch bag so that they can. I don't know if they're just showing off for their friends
that's the first
or if they
time
really
I've heard
love
of a fourth grader doing that.
Yeah, he does. He loves the spice more than his siblings even. Yeah.
Wow. I know you're very hospitable. You have a lot of people over to your home. What is your best advice for prepping for crowds coming in? Because you're already a family of 6.
Yeah.
You're now teaching full time.
Okay, here's my tip, and it's kind of weird, and I learned it from here, and it's not as a tip as you'd think. We do like to have things ready when people come in. I don't do a great job. I could grow in the area of juggling the cooking. We have a kitchen that's very compartmentalized. And if I'm still cooking in the kitchen, there's nowhere for people to go. Like I'm bumping into everybody. So I really like to be done and to have things tidy. Yep. And early on, again, listening to podcasts here, I just made a rule for myself. So my tip with hospitality is if you can't be sweet to your children and respectful and kind to your husband the whole time you're getting ready for hospitality, that you can't finish that sentence, then don't do hospitality, because we're called to hospitality. So the answer is get your attitude right. And that was so sweet to me, is that discipline and obedience of like, you treat your children sweeter than you will treat the third graders that are coming through the door tonight. You can't be barking orders at everybody and then that door open and you pretend like you're in fellowship. So that muscle grows to where it's back and forth. Like God calls you to more and you bark at somebody and you go make it right and you ask for forgiveness. And that's my tip for hospitality. Is
be hospitable to your family first.
Absolutely. And then stay in fellowship.
Other people in.
Yeah. And then your kids enjoy. So I really love getting ready for Sabbath with my children. Like the music's cranked, the house, you don't know if you're going to make it, you know, like the food's like, it's just a funny
race
time.
To the finish line.
So
what specific tasks do you give your kids?
The girls are especially great at the table. We did that early on. I love having names on the table. I'm really bad at names. And coming to this community, the age I am, with the age my kids are, needing to be attentive to them, it has been really hard to learn names of these families that have like 4 to 7 children. And so one of the things my kids will do is we'll get names on the tables. My girls make real pretty little name things. A thing that I don't always do, and I still am like looking for a board that would be really pretty, but I will take a board, and if it's a larger group, I will write all the families' names on the board, and I put it behind the buffet so that as people go through the buffet, they can look and remember. And this came to me when some friends from our little church that we're at had her family over, and they were from Indonesia. And so her family had names that were hard for me to remember, and to see it written out helped me. So that is a tip. But getting ready, I mean, everybody can clean a bathroom. Everybody now they've done these things for years. And so rather than me barking the orders, I really let my husband, I'm like, hey, what do you want? What do you want us doing? And he's like, okay, you go here, you go here, you go here, you go here. If you teach a job too late, it's not interesting. But if you teach an 8-year-old how to iron napkins, it feels big time. And so I've always taught my not little, but right where I feel like they're handling a knife well, I'm going to let them try the iron on something flat.
And then they're really excited about it.
They're so excited.
As opposed to, say, a 14-year-old who's not excited about it at all.
Okay, I have a funny story for you. So last week, teaching full-time, it's hard to give up some of I do like ironing, but I'm not ironing anymore. I've found ways to get around it by being attentive to the dryer. But anyway, I have taught my children to iron, but I ran down. I mean, I'm telling you, it was 6:15 in the morning. It's early, and I needed to iron something real quick. And so I have a habit, when I turn on a cold iron, I just lay my whole palm flat on the iron. And then the second I can't handle it is 2 seconds before it's ready for me to iron. So I'll just like put my hand on the iron. And so I ran downstairs, I plugged it in, I just put my hand flat on the iron, and it was red hot. My 4th grader had gone down there and ironed a shirt at 6:15.
And had unplugged it and put it away, and you didn't know it was still hot.
5 minutes before. And it just burned my palm. It wasn't 1 second before. It was barely burned it. But I got so tickled. I was like, what have I done? I have a 4th grader who irons his shirts,
before going to school. Okay, that's incredible.
That's weird. It's weird, Bess. But anyway, so those are the things.
Iron shirts and Tabasco sauce.
Yes, a picture is forming. And I do not always iron napkins, but
But they know how.
They know
and
how.
That's really
that might be a job they would be doing on a Saturday
they can help
before.
set the table.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Get the cute little name cards or make them artistic and all the things.
Yeah.
They have the tablescape already set up. Your daughter does.
Now my daughter, yeah, she's doing the beautiful centerpieces and stuff. It was a real fun time when they're just getting into it and you're kind of letting them. You're like, okay, you can use any china you want tonight. Like, how do you want to set it up? You can, And
then being able to make the decisions is really fun because they really take ownership of it.
Take ownership. And they're super proud of it. And then the people that sit around the table, you're like, you might not know, but Olive set the table tonight and she cut the flowers out of the yard. And
then it's really
she's
impressive. And she's glowing. And excited that she got to do it.
Yeah. That's really fun.
So what is your best advice for showing warm hospitality when people come into your home? You've mentioned some things already.
For the ladies that come, having something on their plate, just a notepad, or I think having people's names there's a real warmth. Even the way you seat people, I think
thought it through who's going to enjoy.
That's right, of honoring certain people.
They have a place to go sit. They know where they are supposed to be or where to set their purse or their jacket if they have a name tag.
We've worked hard on that because our house, it was a very different style than our old one, and we've had to kind of hustle to have those things. And there's like a lot more snow gear. So for people to have, we're still not there yet. We have a lot more to do, but it's been a long time since I've had babies. But one thing that I do is I try to think through the age of the little ones that are coming. And so this is something very fun. So in my dining room, I took the table that my children did little art projects. So I had the big art table, in the side room where we did art, but there was always a very small table in my kitchen so that if a child wanted to sit down with a snack, there were 2 small chairs and a small table, like right at this little window. So I brought that here, not having people that were that size anymore, but I repainted it so it would look nice in my dining room. So I have my formal dining room, but in the corner, there's this little black table with 2 little black chairs. And so if we have a 2 and a 3 or 4-year-old that come to Sabbath who don't need to sit in a separate room, like we usually put our middle-aged children at the kitchen table, which is in the next room. But it's really fun because we can decorate their little teeny table. And sometimes
they probably feel so big sitting at
their own
big. Table
and
with their own
sometimes
chairs.
My Olive, who is my second daughter, she is amazing with children. And so she will sometimes sit with them at that little table.
Which is such a great help to the parents.
Oh, yeah.
They're not having to hold them in their lap or maybe have them in a big chair that they're having to stand in or it's just too big for them.
Well, and I found here a high chair, and there's like a little papasan for if somebody comes over with a newborn. And we have a basement, so I can keep these things even though I don't have a baby. So that's one way. And then my favorite thing is we inherited a house that has more closets than any human deserves. Like, it's really incredible. There's a lot of storage. And so right next to where we have our coat closet, there is this closet that is all my baby toys. And so when we moved to Idaho, Ian was like, why are we bringing Duplo blocks? Why are we bringing baby toys? Like, we do not have a baby.
And you are getting past this stage.
And so, Bess, when little ones come into my house, I say,
a treasure trove.
I am so glad you're here. Would your mother mind if I show you this closet? And it has a little step stool. And so I say, you get out. And I'm also a type A person. So I say, get out a toy. And when you're done, put it back and come get another toy. And we have this kind of dropped living room that's carpeted. And it is like the sweetest thing to go in there. And it's such a safe little area for those 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds. And, they've got the Duplos out and they have all of my favorite little, and there's this whole collection of baby books that, I have like lined up on one of those little shelves. So anyway.
Well, and what a sweet thing to save to hand down to your children one day.
Well, they'll be trashed by then.
That's true. If they're currently being used.
We're using, but that's my theme is use it up. I probably heard that here too, of like, pull out the china. Yeah, that's why I always felt really good.
Stashed up high in a closet and closed it. It is so true. If you have china from your grandmother,
use it up.
Toys that your children play with, unless you're saving it to hand down to them, and they're going to use it.
And
one day.
I do have a couple of those things, and I just don't. I don't put them out.
A lot of times if you save it, like if you have grandmother's china and it's never used, nobody wants it because there's no memories with it.
No, there's no memories.
Nobody remembers it even being grandmother's china because it was never used.
Yeah.
It's meant to be used. So I totally agree with you. Pull out all the things that you treasure and love so much and use them. Enjoy them.
Well, and that's the other thing is I think ladies our age can really model. The thing that is really sweet is that we can model to younger mothers when their child who was not misbehaving, did drop something and it breaks, that I go to that child. It's only happened a couple of times, but it's like, I could care less. Let's clean this up. Let me get you another one.
This china,
like,
it's meant to be used.
I'm going to be in heaven with you and not this cup. You know, like it was never that I was going to be in heaven with this cup. So
yes, hold it loosely.
Very. Yeah. So I think just having that tone in your home that children are welcome and that you have a place here. I knew you were coming. Your name is here. You know, it's funny. People are so hungry for that. We have a church, the little church downtown that has a lot of college-age kids and more international people coming that are the coolest couple from China that got saved, I think, here when they were they're both PhD geography.
Interesting.
Yeah, very. We have not had them over yet, Bess. And I'm like, it's funny right now going to church because there's so many people that you look at and you think, you need to have a meal in my house.
I need to invite you over. Wait,
my Southern guilt.
And you.
My husband doesn't ever, he is funny. He doesn't have a Southern guilt complex being from Oregon.
But us Southerners sure do.
Oh, yeah.
What is your must-have kitchen item and where can we find it?
Okay. Well, first of all, you know, I was thinking about all the things that are different about our kitchens than, say, 150 years ago, just to have a sink. I was thinking every single thing in my kitchen, what a gift. And I love my Cuisinart and I love my blender. And I mean, there's just so many great things. But I did think of my favorite thing, and I'm not sure any of your guests have said this. So I had people in my 20s that sold friends, a sister, and they sold Cutco knives.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I
know about Cutco knives.
Do you know about the Cutco kitchen scissors? Do you have a pair?
No, I do not have a pair.
They are super expensive if you're going to compare them to a pair of scissors at Walmart. I think they're like $75.
Knife, but they last a lifetime.
Okay, here's what they do best. I use them probably 6 times a day. I use them for everything. So you can take them out in your yard. They're heavy duty. So you could, I've always had an herb garden. I don't have a proper one here, but I would go chop flowers and herbs, but you can cut chicken with it. They disassemble, so you wash them in separate pieces and they hook on in a way that they never come apart when you're using them, but they're very, very easy to take apart.
My sister has these, I'm pretty sure.
That
sounds very familiar.
But here's the thing. Like if you get a Cutco product, its warranty is good for life. So I have had
it for you.
Yeah,
like you can send it back.
All
in
you do is
and they'll
pay a
sharpen
nominal sharpening fee.
And they really do last.
This is actually a time of year that this is a great gift.
Warranty.
Everything in my kitchen is like, wow, I'm glad I have it. But those are like they're a handy dandy. Use them 10 times a day. Like when I need another pair. Oh,
and their bread knife.
Yeah.
My cheese knife, I think it may have been a gift. And then my nephew for a short time sold Cutco knives.
Yep.
And I bought from him the bread knife. I use it all the time.
Oh,
all the time.
Well, and do you send it off to get sharpened?
I haven't yet.
You got to.
I need to.
They will sharpen it.
But
and
it
then
still seems sharp. But it probably really.
Is it the long one?
Mm-hmm, it's the very long one.
I've got that one.
The short one. I bought the long one because it's long enough that, when you have to cut a cake in half, you're not having to do like one side and then the other and it's uneven. You can just go all the way through. And then, of course, it cuts any size.
Their bread knives are really
it's
good.
Really great.
Yeah. They have I know this is going to sound goofy.
And the cheese knife. If you don't have a cheese knife, by the way, you need a cheese knife.
Yeah.
If you don't even, if you've never used one, you don't know what you're missing out on.
See, I don't have the cheese knife, Bess. Okay.
How do you cut cheese? Like
terribly.
Now that I've had one.
No.
A cheese knife, you can cut it as fine and thin, and it does not stick because it has the opening.
I will say I use the side of my grater. You know that weird diagonal slice
I've never
that you're
used
like,
that.
why is
because
it there?
I guess I have the cheese
because
knife.
you
I'll
have
to
that. You
try
don't need
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if I'm doing a ton of slices for like grilled cheese, and
You can use that.
don't. Yeah.
I'll try that just to
Okay.
see, but I kind of think my cheese knife is better. But
No, I definitely need to buy that. It is the hole in my collection.
and it literally has a hole. It looks
does.
really weird.
I think it's kind of put me off. I don't like the hole.
It's so perfect.
Okay.
Because I guess it's created there. So as it cuts, it has the hole sit there. So as it's cutting, it doesn't stick.
Yeah, no,
As it
I
goes
get it.
through.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just pull and tear the cheese. I really don't know how I cut cheese before.
I'm literally
It's
going to
not, 'cause
probably
I've had
have
it
to
for
like buy
years.
that like today.
And yes,
I
they
feel
have
convicted.
the one I have has like the comfort handle. It's like a
Oh no, the Cutco
silicone
knives.
or rubber or something. I mean, I
Okay.
guess you could get a different handle, but I really, really like it a lot. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Shout out.
So
the
yes,
Cutco.
so your top
Okay, yeah.
recommend is the
Cutco scissors.
Scissors.
I'm not going to
So
lie.
you're going to go buy the cheese knife. I'm going to buy the scissors.
Yeah. Okay, I know you're running the show, but I do have a cleaning tip for you.
Okay.
Okay, the cleaning tip, Bess, when you said that, it reminded me of this memory that I have, but it reminded me of when I was a newlywed, okay? And I think I had a baby, and it was one of the first times that my mother-in-law had come to a newer house that we had in Nashville. And I fancied myself a clean wife, clean my house, but she always jumps in. This past week she was here cooking. She's amazing. She's great in the kitchen. We discovered in my drain that there was a bean that had been sitting there so long that it had sprouted and had green leaves growing up through the little silver drain. Like the bean had gotten caught in the green. So I had not cleaned my sink in so long that beans were sprouting leaves. So when
what's
I
your
was
hot
thinking
cleaning
about
tip?
clean your
Clean
sink.
your drain.
So ever since then, I have I scour. I mean, I'm not.
How do you clean your drain? So you're talking about like getting your hand or something down in there, or do
No,
you just pour hot,
the little
like boiling
silver,
water?
the silver drain, or the what's the right word? Like
The thing that catches food,
yes, why can't we think of that word?
like a strainer.
A strainer.
Okay.
No, it had lodged in the strainer. So what that tells you is that I had not lifted the strainer to clean. I'm not talking about special
I see.
techniques
You're
here.
not talking about like down in a garbage disposal or
No,
something.
no.
Yes.
I'm just talking about basic lift your
And
your
when you're cleaning the sink, lift that up, scrub all around it and down below it.
Just clean your sink. Period. So anyway,
Well,
when
hot
I was
tip,
thinking,
you can throw those in the dishwasher.
oh yes, and
You
now
can throw your strainers in the dishwasher and they come out.
and I put my
squeaky
sponges
clean.
in the dishwasher. Yeah.
Yes.
So I now scour with like a Clorox.
And to clean down in your drains, you can do boiling water. Some
Yes,
people
definitely.
to clean their disposals, I think they can grind ice and
Oh, okay.
I think I've heard lemon peels.
Yeah.
I would Google and make sure, or
We've had
maybe read your
plumbing
manual
issues.
just to make sure that it can grind up. Because I think, similar to lots of things that we have in our house, there's some garbage disposals that can handle anything.
Yeah.
They're just really top line, top notch, and then there's others. It's like, well, could it really?
Could it?
Grind up a lemon rind or eggshells or all the things without
So
it clogging.
depending on the quality.
So depending on how old
Yeah.
it is, I don't know. I don't want to recommend that, but ice would be fine.
Clean it. Yeah. But my cleaning tip is just clean your sinks. You know?
That is a great tip and
Don't-
something we forget
Don't
about.
let plants sprout in your drains.
Well, it's good your mom discovered it versus
Right.
the new guest that just walked in.
Well, it was my mother-in-law did not disown me, so to her credit. That also reminds me of a hilarious time, though, that she was also at our house. She always shows up to help when you're in the trenches. So she had come when we were packing to move, and I was fully 8 months pregnant, and my husband was going on a sailing trip, and we had ripped the kitchen out of the house we were in to put it into the house we were moving into, which is a weird thing, but our house had been flooded and then we rebuilt, and then the city was going to like by our house. Anyway, we found ourselves in a situation where I was with my mother-in-law fully pregnant and with no kitchen. And I just have these sweet memories of the two of us doing all the dishes in the bathtub for like a whole week, while we were waiting to move.
At least
and waiting.
You had a friend.
She was a real friend. And then the tip is wash your bathtub.
And the drain.
And the drain. But yeah.
That's pretty good.
No.
And don't tell guests that you washed the dishes.
There were no guests that week. No.
Even though it was really clean.
Oh, no. That was funny.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join me
welcome.
and to tell us all your Southern tips and German tips and Ethiopian tips. I love it. It's just so unique and such a fun and different way to do hospitality, or just different ideas of food to present when you do hospitality.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for joining me.
You're very welcome.
Until next time, bye for now.